Welcome to Full Throttle Talk, the podcast where horsepower meets conversation. From supercars to classic legends, high revving tech to motorsport mayhem, we cover it all. Straight from the driver's seat, whether you're a gearhead or racer or just love the thrill of the open road, you're in the right place. Buckle up, hit the gas, and let's go full throttle into today's episode. Welcome back. This is Full Throttle Talk. Without a doubt, no question in your mind, this is your favorite weekly automotive podcast. And we have got what I believe will be our best podcast ever. Not because I'm back on the show after having taken a week off, but because we've really worked on our agenda and you guys are going to love it. Thank you for all the listener questions. It's very much directed some of the topics we're going to be talking about. And I have great, exciting news for all of you. We are going to be talking about the Porsche 997 buyer's guide, which a lot of you have been requesting. So without any further delay, so what we're going to be doing this week is we're going to be talking about automotive news that caught the guys' attention. We're going to be talking about this or that, daily drivers for under 75 grand, spoilers or wings, which do you prefer? That's a big point of controversy. Obviously the 997 buyer's guide, and then we're going to get to your listener questions. We're probably going to intertwine listener questions into everything. So wish us luck sticking to our agenda because we very rarely do it. So guys, let's start out. And again, as always, Casey, Dave, and Paul. So let's start out with Paul. What did you do in cars this week, Paul? Let's hear about one of your incredible Southern California sojourns to make us all jealous.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to pack as many drives in as I can. Besides the normal going up to Newcomb's Ranch on Friday, Sunday, I went to Garage 79 out in Warner Springs, California, which is basically an old gas station that this guy Omar converted into a tavern bar, and they're only open on the weekend, very car centric. And I went out with my buddy in his new to him Lancia Fulvia, and we did about a 150-mile drive, back road drive to Garage 79, which is, if you're in California, it's kind of near between Julian and Anzo Borrego, out in that way. It was an eclectic group. We had probably about 20 cars join us from this replica Ford GT. Besides the Lancia, we also had an MGA. It was just, this is for you, Tim. This Pantera was more bark than bite, I think, but the license plate frame
Hold on. This is for you, Tim. More bark than bite. Okay, I'm picking it up. That's what kind of show we're gonna have today. All right, son.
Well, no, this was more bark. This is for you, Tim, as in a Pantera, Italian-ish, loud.
Okay.
But then
he needs to point out it's got the tricolore stripes that were $50,000 that were cleared over.
Because it was sold in America, that was like about $50 at Pep Boys.
And if the best part is the license plate frame, the kind of car you're dealing with here for sure.
So I mean, this was just harken right back to the late 70s. Porsches for breakfast, Ferraris for lunch. Damn nice. And the guy was actually very nice. But I took out my 928, which I affectionately call the 928 Hindenburg, because it did catch on fire once, as a 928 will do. And it was kind of the perfect car, air conditioning, cruising, fast, slow, whatever. But anyway, Omar has a very cool place. And there was probably 200 cars there, mostly Porsches and Volkswagens. But if you're ever out in Warner Springs, go see them. I think they're only open like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They have bands, they have taco trucks, things like that.
That's fantastic. I would love to have been there with you. But we did have fun on our Hillbilly car guide tour, but I'll talk about that last. So on our Hillbilly car guide tour, we stopped off at Dave Van Epps' shop at Sunderworks. And I'm not going to rant about it because it'll sound like a commercial for Sunderworks. But I have to say, I was truly impressed.
No problem with that, Tim. I have no problem with that. Go ahead, ramble all you want.
Well, okay. So I told you guys this in WhatsApp. I don't want to actually overly promote Sunderworks because I don't want Dave to become a Southern California Porsche snob and all of a sudden not make you have to wait 3 years before you can have your spark plugs changed. But his shop was impressive in ways that I haven't seen in a long time. Most of the Porsche shops, for example, in Southern California, they're small, they're more boutique, and that's great. And you have a really great experience, but you've got to wait 4 and 5 years before they even, can maybe start on your car in some cases. Dave can do a stem to stern restoration, be it a resto mod or a restoration back to OEM in like 18 months, depending on the work that it needs. But here's what really was really astonishing to me. His shop is vertically integrated. So he had engine, he had body, he had interior, he had some great mechanics, and all the quality of work. And I'm very particular, probably not as picky as Casey is, maybe, because Casey's got probably a better eye than I do. But I saw no defects in any of the work that I saw. Even when I was poking around some of the motors that they had rebuilt and reinstalled, they were beautiful. All the surfaces, all the stickers, and these are old 911s, a lot of them were just immaculate. The paint quality was amazing. Well, here I'm saying I wasn't going to do a commercial for Sunderworks, but there I'm doing it. But yeah, it was
hell of a
great.
job, Tim. Hell of a job.
Yeah. Thank you. So, anyways, if you're on the West Coast and you're tired of waiting around for a shop to open up, or if you're looking, frankly, for a lot more, dare I say, reasonable pricing, I would definitely look into Sunderworks. And also, and I'm going to say this, and you told me I could, he has got some very famous customers. If you don't want me to talk about it, say, and one of which is Jeff. One of which is Jeff Gordon, and Jeff Gordon sent some other NASCAR guys to Dave to build these hot ride 911s. But yeah, I mean, so I was impressed, and I really appreciate you hosting Julie and I and our dog Max. It was nice.
So
Max
wait a
was
minute,
great.
NASCAR guys don't drive like Ford Tauruses as their fun weekend car,
No,
or their
definitely not.
Mustangs?
Definitely not. It's hilarious, right? I mean, these guys have amazing car collections, and Jeff has personally become quite a Porsche guy. I mean, he does have a GT3 Cup, and that he had to track in order to get. He had to jump back on a track to do one race, or else Porsche wouldn't have given him a car. But obviously, his connections with Hendrick and Hendrick Porsche and just the Hendrick brand, he can kind of what he wants when he wants. But between he and Alex Bowman, who's another driver, they have some amazing Porsches for sure. And I'll find a picture while we're all talking here of the car we built for him. Gorgeous 964 backdate in oak green metallic with a gorgeous, like, kind of tobacco colored interior. I mean, it was a really, really sweet car. And I'll find a picture of that later on.
I inadvertently took over our weekly updates, and now I'm talking about our Hillbilly Car Guide tour. So I'll finish with my summary. So we also ended up going to Corvette, and I know this is a place that Paul is very, very jealous of, never having visited before. I was I was not able to find any cutoff shorts, and the appropriate Corvette garb did not find its way to my body. But the Corvette factory was truly impressive, and I'm going to never completely understand the C8 ZR1, because I really do, and this is not the podcast necessarily to talk about it extensively, but I really do think that car has changed all the rules with regards to supercars, sports cars, and even hypercars. Again, we don't need to talk about it today, but going through the Corvette factory, I'll tell you what I was really happy to see. So when you were watching, there's videos for the watching and reading everywhere up, all the placards, and Zora, who is the guy that essentially made Corvette into a sports car. I told you guys this in WhatsApp, but he was an engineer for Porsche. Did you guys know that he was an engineer for Porsche?
Yep.
Yeah, you guys have to
I
talk,
didn't.
otherwise the Zoom doesn't bounce around.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, I do remember reading something about that, but when was that? Like in the early days of Porsche, wasn't it? When they
50s,
were,
yeah.
yeah,
But
just
Paul, did you know that he raced a 550 at Le Mans, and the Le Mans winning team in a 550? Did you know that?
I remember he raced something because he is a car guy racer, but I didn't remember that it was a 550, but good for him. I mean, that's a good connection for you.
Totally. So that's exactly where I'm going with it. So I'm walking around in this Corvette factory, and I'll be honest with you, Julie is just not, she's just loving making fun of me. She's just as mean as you are, Paul. So we're walking around the Corvette factory, and she's taking her little jabs at me. And then we come around the corner, and there's this picture of the history of Zora and his wife. And it's just beautiful. Not, the whole history of their escaping Europe and World War II, and they had Bugattis and all the rest of it. I knew none of it. And then there was this video that was playing of him racing 550s for the Porsche family. And it's like, oh, okay, I finally won this one. Now there's the connection between Corvette and Porsche. So yeah, the Hillbilly Car Guy tour was a success overall, I have to say. There's some places I wish we would have gone that we didn't end up going, but those were my two highlights from my past week. So Dave, I'll pass the baton to you. What were your highlights automotively from the past week?
Well, other than yours and Julie's visit, and in particular with Max as well, which was a lovely visit. We're glad you stopped by, of course, and saw your car, which is kind of like right there in this picture, right there. For those of you who can see on YouTube. Um, We hosted a big kind of blowout weekend. We had a big open house at Sunderworks on Saturday morning, which was kind of done in partnership with Auto Car Club, which is a 47 unit luxury car storage facility that's being built directly adjacent to Sunderworks on a 6 acre parcel of property directly next to us. So we hosted a big car event, open house, probably about 150 cars or so that showed up kind of in and out over a 4 hour period. Really great stuff, like all kinds of stuff. We didn't keep it closed down to just Porsche or just Europeans or American muscles. So there was a little of everything from Corvettes to um, Subaru WRXs and JDM stuff of all kinds. Really, really nice turnout. We had a great time. It's always a good excuse to get our shop looking really nice as well. Obviously, about every 90 days you go through there and kind of try to blow out the body shop and make it look nice. And I think everybody really did enjoy it. It was a good event. I think we've decided we'll probably try to do 3 or 4 of these a year. Um, and it always opens up opportunities, more followers. Guys will show up and kind of like you, Tim, where they didn't realize that we did all this or that or this, and then they'll bring a car or they'll suddenly want to buy a car. They get inspired. I do find that a lot. I bet you do too, Paul and Casey. Guys that show up at a car show and they get all frothy, and then suddenly they got to have a car, right? They didn't have the car that they wanted, or they sold the car. And now they see all these cars, and I've got a guy that's now looking for a nice Targa, late '80s Targa, based on coming to the show. So that was my weekend. It was great, a lot of fun.
Casey.
I had a open house at the dealership a zillion years ago, and one of our old customers showed up, and it turned out that he was in an elevator that fell like 8 floors. And because we had this open house at the dealership, he bought a turbo cab off the floor that day. So, yes, I know all about the power of open houses for sure. No, that's awesome. And you and I were talking, you didn't even talk about the prototype or the chassis number 1910 that you had there, which I'm sure we'll
Yeah,
have to
no, I
get
did.
in at some
I do
point.
actually have that too behind me. But we have spoken about this car before on the show,
Right.
and this was
Oh,
the
man.
car that had kind of the checkered serial number pass to it, right? This is the one where there's somebody else claiming this car is 001 over in Europe, but this was an early car, 910. The gentleman who I talked about on last week's show, Martin Stager, is storing this car literally in his garage, this $2 million car in his garage over here on the point or in the peninsula here in the Cornelius area. And he calls me up and he goes, "Hey, you want me to bring the car over to your event?" I said, "Sure." Yeah, so we went over and picked it up, and boom, there it is.
Dave,
So
isn't that the car when we were at Highlands for that car show? Doesn't that guy drive that thing on the street, or am I thinking of something
no, no,
different?
not this particular car. I think there's one that's got a similar paint scheme though, Tim. And this car wasn't in Highlands. It has been down to Amelia. It's been to a few other shows. This one they did try to sell it on Bring a Trailer not too long ago, and it only got up to $1.5 million, and then it kind of just it cratered from there. And I think he's really looking for around two to move this car. And it's over here in the U.S. because the owner in Germany can't afford to keep paying the taxes that the Germans want on all these expensive cars. So I think he's got a 917 that's up in Connecticut and this car that's over here in the Charlotte area. Cool car. And we started it up in the shop and made a lot of racket, but it was a cool experience, a lot of
So
fun.
are those is it a 3 liter flat eight or a 2.5
Oh, it's
liter?
actually a six. I,
I think
I,
it's
Oh,
I
a
it is
wish
a
I could tell
six.
you
I
the
think it's a
displacement. It's
two.
a six.
I think it's a 2 liter six cylinder, like a 906 motor.
But
Yeah.
did that 910 chassis, did they put the flat eight in it, or it
I
feels like
don't know the
something that
answer.
they would have done different stuff. And one of my favorite things about 60s liveries, they hadn't quite gone, like 70s was the big advertisers, sponsorship, deliveries. But in the 60s, you started seeing liveries that were more about identifying the car on the track. So like I love how that one has just the right, as the UK or Europe would call it, the right wing just with red. It doesn't look like the left wing has it, just the
No,
right
it
wing.
doesn't. Yep.
Sometimes the license plate panel or the bumpers are colored just so that they can identify which team car, or if there's two cars similar with one team, is coming into pit. And I don't know, it's just that kind of lopsided livery I've always really liked.
Yeah,
And one day
this
would
one's
love to
just got
drive
a
on the
few
short
little
wheelbase.
sponsors, some Bosch logos on it and stuff.
Yep.
Obviously, driver names that have driven this car. Nicky Lauda drove this car. Um, yeah, that I mean, it's a neat piece. And one of the things that I noticed, and Casey, I know we didn't get to you here yet, but these cars are tiny. You know, you think about these race cars, and we look at race cars today, and you walk up on this thing, and it's like, holy crap, is this a kit car? Like, it is tiny. The wheels are small, and you get in this thing, and the thought of going 200 miles an hour with my feet out over the front axle here it scares the bejesus out of me. I mean, you're dead if you get in a wreck in this car. You're just dead.
And what I love about this era is I think the 60s prototypes were the last era you could legally drive on the street. I mean, Jeff Zwart famously drives his 906 all over the place. I mean, even in Southern California when it's raining, I've seen him driving down one of the side streets with the largest, like, people don't understand what rooster tails look like at Le Mans. I mean, he's going 50 down a side street and it was raining in Southern California. This is years ago. And there was probably a 15-foot rooster tail. It looked like an offshore boat. I can't imagine at Le Mans with those rooster tails just, going 200 miles an hour. But it's
Yeah.
insane. I love that era prototype just for the fact that you can drive it on the street and it's okay. Not easy, but okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right,
All right.
Casey, you're up. What have you
S-
done that's exciting since our last podcast?
So I drove a grouping of cars the other day, and I really think it's going to lead to another conversation. Now that we've seen the beginning and the end of Boxster 981, 982, 718, I really believe that we need to do kind of like what is peak. Because I know what you like, Tim. I drove the other day, and I did it in reverse order. I drove a Spider RS with the top completely off. I drove a 22 Spider manual, and then I followed it up with it's not a Boxster, but a 2016 GT4. And I think I'll just kind of leave it at like, I won't go into which one I like the most because I do think it's a different conversation, but I'm going to leave it there for now. But I think you'd probably be surprised at which one I like the most. So other things that happened, I went to talk to a local shop about some Bring a Trailer work, and the guy said, "Yeah, I've got a car that I might want to sell on Bring a Trailer." And I was like, "Oh, what is it?" He's like, "Oh, it's a Volkswagen." I was like, "Oh no, this is gonna be bad." So I said, "Well, what?" He's like, "Yeah, it's a 2004 R32," and I was like, "Oh." And I said, "Well," I said, "What color is it? Please don't tell me it's silver." He said, "Yeah, it's reflex silver." I said, "Huh." I said, "Please tell me you're not the original owner." He said, "Yep, I'm the original owner." I said, "Please tell me it doesn't have below 50,000 miles on it." He said, "Yep, it's got 38,000 miles on it." So I went over and looked at the car, and oh, it was perfect. If I've ever seen a $50,000 R32, it's this car. Um, I said, "Can I sit in it?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "I'm preparing for it to smell like crayons." Got in the car, pretty much the only Mark IV Volkswagen I've ever been in that did not smell like crayons. That's not to say that the moment you put that thing outside, it's not going to turn into a Crayola box, but that's beside the point. Um, also, so I'm not sure if he'll ever sell the car because it is a one owner example, and that's pretty much the hardest car to ever motivate somebody to sell. But in lieu of that, I've talked before about my 964 that I bought the car from a now 84-year-old woman. And I got an email from her the other day saying that she found some memorabilia in the garage and wanted me to have it. And I said, "Awesome, Susan." I said, "This is my address. Please send it to me." Super appreciative. So I got the box. It was not well packed, and I shook it and it was real rattly. So I figured whatever was in it was destroyed. But I opened up the box and it was the original air pump from the car, and it was 100% never used. And other than the packing damage that it sustained just on the corners, just a little bit of scuffing here and there, the thing had every nozzle, everything attached to it as it came from the factory. And I deal with 5,000-mile 964s all day long, and I've never seen one this clean. So I put it on my Instagram, and basically what I said is, remember, low owner cars are better than low mile cars, because getting that history from the person that owned the car originally and you have that relationship with is so much more important than let's say, a car that might say one owner, but it bounced between six dealerships, being wholesaled from dealership to dealership before it got sold. So I would
Casey,
always,
are we allowed to celebrate along with you the recognition you just got from the PCA with regards to 997s? Can we announce that, or is that something you want to hold off on?
uh, Tim, you can go for it.
We are now able to lay claim to having, according to the Porsche Club of America, the number one expert in the world. Now, Casey's going to pull me back on my, words, but for Porsche 997s, he is the expert that now Porsche in Germany is texting, asking for advice about how to fix their cars. So, Casey, congratulations on that. Is that
That
not the label you got?
I'm pretty self-deprecating, but I will tell you that that is a little, I would say, inflamed.
Well, but they did that. You are officially the
Yeah, so
997 expert for PCA.
that is correct. I am the 997 technical expert for the Porsche Club of America.
All right. So
I mean, the minute I posted this car or mentioned it, I mean, Casey was coming with all this information, so it was
I
very
just said you
helpful.
got to price that thing high because they're not making them like that anymore.
well,
And
let's get
I,
to that. But
yeah,
let's do some inventory updates since Paul's moved us to a new segment. So you guys are all in the car business. I'm the enthusiast. So Paul, what do you have that's for sale, or what have you sold since our last? And obviously, Paul's the owner of Auto Kennel. If you guys don't know it, and I'll strongly suggest that you do everything in your power to get on Paul's newsletter, on his mailing list, because the descriptions he writes for his cars are poetic. They're incredible. And even if you're not interested in what the car he has for sale, you're going to read his description just because he writes it so entertainingly. So,
Oh,
Paul,
great.
what do you have for sale that's interesting that we need to brag about and maybe help you sell?
No, thank you. And by the way, with Casey is entering a phase that Dave and I both know about, which I call the alcoholic owning the bar. When you start selling stuff, you start buying stuff. Like that R32, you'll get that car to sell and you'll be like, I cannot let it go.
I told my wife about it because she has known that I have wanted an R32 since they came out, and I told the story on here, and I've never driven one, and they
Mm.
might get ready for this. You ready for this? It's a hero. It is a hero car of mine, and the only other real hero car that I've had was a 993 turbo, and the way that I built that up in my head, it came nowhere close to a Carrera RS is 10x better than a 993 turbo, a 993
Well,
Carrera RS, but we don't need to go down that
I
that
can't
road.
wait for you to get that one owner R32. I'm excited for you.
Oh. But she
Me
said
too.
absolutely not. The 964 would have to go away. But anyway,
Um,
keep going.
so anyway, the 996 turbo hardtop that we have with 9,000 miles, I barely listed it. I drove it out of my parking lot to go take it to the mechanic to do his service. My neighbor who lives across the alley from me, he's coming home from lunch, just gratuitous, sees me driving out and he's like, "What is that? I've never seen one with a hardtop on, or there was a hardtop. I don't have a picture of it loaded up." And so that's sold and that's gone. 996 GT3 is gone. Right now, I'm seeing a phase of what I call what are the young timer classics, the 2000s, the stuff that's like 15 to 20 years old, the 991.1 C4S gone in today. We just listed this, which is sort of, I would call it a future unicorn. Like its little unicorn thing's really small. It hasn't grown out really big yet. Um, because this is
A
sort of
nub.
like 89 G50 Carrera, 92 to 94 964, 98 993, kind of that end of an era. This is a 2012 Carrera Coupe manual with an MSRP that's really like an S. And what's really weird about this, and Casey, after we talked, I did some more research. Porsche always does this at the end of a model year, like there's like '05 they did it, in 2012 they did it. They'll do this transition where they'll have half the wide body cars will be the previous model, and the narrow body will be the new one. So in 2012, the 991.1 is coming out as a narrow body car, but they're still selling Carrera 4s, 4Ss, turbos, which are wide body. This is a narrow body manual coupe, which is really unusual. And the MSRP was $95,000, which by the way is like over 150 today. So it's kind of, like I said, a really high option car. And what was unusual about it, and I was trying to figure it out because it had these wheels on it, not the wheels that are on it now. The wheels on it now are the widest narrow body wheels you can get. They're 11 and a half wide
Yeah,
rear.
they run. It was the only way to get 305s in the back.
Yep, exactly. But this car is spec'd exactly like a Black Series, Black Edition 12. So in 2012, typical Porsche, to get rid of inventory, they decided to come out with the Black Series, and they're all Carrera 4s, black with fully loaded options. This has the identical options to it: full leather, sport exhaust, manual transmission. And this owner specifically ordered, and by the way, the owner was was the principal for Jim Ellis Porsche in Atlanta, which was sort of right, not far from PCNA. And for whatever reason, they usually don't order something that's the beginning of production, like a new launch thing. This is the very end. I estimate they probably made about 200 of manual coupe or coupes for 2012. Of those, maybe 20 of them were manuals. So I don't expect that one to last long, but it is. I drove it. This is the pictures from Newcomb's. I drove it Friday. I wanted to do a 200-mile test drive just to see, like, is it as good as everyone says it is, or is this sort of the emperor has no clothes? And Casey, since you're now the expert on it, one thing I noticed, it doesn't have PASM, which the owner ordered specifically so that you could go back and put in a Bilstein or a KW suspension. It feels like it's always in sport mode. Like if you have PASM, you have sport and comfort, and usually comfort, sport's obviously firmer. This feels like it's always in sport mode because on the mountain road, it was insanely dynamic, and on the street, it felt a little old school analog. I don't know if that's the case, but it was a wonderful 200-mile with a 60-mile back road loop in it.
But Paul, you said you wanted to know if the emperor had no clothes, but you did not actually tell us what your opinion was. You're just talking about it. So what did you
It's
actually think? And hold nothing back, my friend.
Here's the frustration. It is really good. It is. I see why people want them, and this is also an issue of supply and demand. Even in the newsletter, I said this is sort of the economics law of scarcity. When you know something is scarce, even if it isn't, but if you know it is, if you think it's scarce, it's going to drive up the value. This car we listed on our website for $80,000 for a base Carrera manual. Just with 30, it's got 33,000 miles, original paint, meteor gray, blah, blah, blah. We just sold a 991.1 C4S with 36,000 miles, roughly the same miles, but a 4S with 135,000 MSRP. This was 95, and that sold for 80 grand. And now, granted, that was a PDK, but both coupes, one's a 4S and a next generation. And my question was, given the choice for $80,000, which would I have? Now, me personally, because I'm in LA and I have plenty of manual cars, I probably would take the 991.1. But if you're new to Porsche, you want kind of that one car solution. I want it to be fun, analog, but I need to use it as a car sometimes, not just a weekend thing. I can see why there's such demand. And because there's so few manuals, it's no wonder, the estimate, they made half as many 997.2s as 997.1s. But the alarming thing is the take rate on manuals was like under 20%. Whereas on the 997.1, it was closer to 45-50%. So
Yeah, we were really dumb back then. I ordered a lot of PDK cars.
Yep. So yeah, it's I predict in 10 years when these hit 25-year-old cars, I have a feeling that these are going to be highly sought after. And the GTS manual, I mean, the GTS manual coupes, the two-wheel drive, are already ridiculous. I mean, if this is 80 grand. If this was a 2010, 11 GTS, which is wide body, rear wheel drive, manual coupe, this would be $140,000. And then the question is, do I get that or a 997.1 GT3?
So did you sell that really incredibly well done 73 RS Tribute?
No, we haven't got it yet. I think the owner, he likes, I think, your pricing, Tim, and Casey's pricing.
You shouldn't have had to listen to the show.
Yeah, but I think the reality is it's not going to be quite there yet. Um, and typically I like things for the right reason, but I'm usually wrong because the masses like something else. So, perfect example. This car is great. Is it $80,000 great? I don't know. Not for me, but it's really wonderful. But it doesn't matter what I say because
Well,
the internet
we're gonna be
wants it.
talking about new car prices now with tariffs here in a second because we've had a lot of listeners are asking us questions about that. So I have a feeling 80,000 is the new entry price for a basically bone stock Civic. So we're gonna get there. So Casey, what have you? I see you have in your notes here that you've got actually a wide variety of cars that you have maybe for sale. Update us.
So I wanted to kind of go off of what Paul said. I talked before about this 2011 C2 that I sold originally, then talked my buddy in Aptos into buying it, and then my buddy in Aptos, I was gonna put it for him, put it on Bring a Trailer for him, and then another one of my buddies was looking at a 996 GT3, and he just couldn't make sense of things. And I said, hey, if you want a small car that is fun to drive, is a very low cost of ownership in terms of what Porsches cost to run, you should consider this car that my buddy's selling. So I brokered the deal between my two friends, which was interesting. And that car, I had Reliable pick it up 2 weeks ago, and it got to us on Monday. And my buddy that lives locally, that is the new owner of this vehicle, took it for a ride. And anytime I try to talk somebody into a car that they've never driven before, I have a little bit of reluctance. I said, hey man, if you don't like it, I'll put it on Bring a Trailer and we can sell it for more than you paid for it. So he was, I guess, comfortable with that. And the car showed up, and he was either considering some sort of GT car. He has a paint to sample Brewster Green 992 Turbo now, and before that he had a 992 Stick Carrera S. Really wanted to go back into something that was more interesting. He's best friends with the guy that I had Dave do the interior on his 964, so he's also considering a 964. But he wanted something smaller, didn't necessarily need the power. I'm a bigger fan of slow car fast, and a 997 second gen car is that car to me. Great, incredible steering feel. We could talk about the difference between
We will.
997 and 991 more, but he drove the car and he came in, he was full grins, and he said, I love it. And I said, good, because if you didn't, I don't think we could be friends. Um, so he was super stoked on the car. We're waiting for Porsche Financial Services to release the title, and then we'll get it all dialed up for him. But this car, Paul, as you had mentioned, or as we talked about, this is a PASM car. And one thing that we did, because the original PASM shocks were a little tired, which is what I'm thinking is the standard shocks on yours are 15 years old and only has 30,000 miles on it. They might be on their way out. This car behind me has Bilstein Damptronic suspension on it. And honestly, it's a little low. So we're going to wind it up a little bit. The guy out in California put Cup 2s on it, which is a ton of tire for this car, but it's
Yeah.
real sticky along with the alignment. But he came from a GT3, so that's what he wanted. I have as far as business updates, I'm listing an Austin Healey, a 1965 BJ6. Beautiful car for a guy. That's we're photographing that next week, along with I'm doing a really cool photo shoot with Porsche Club of America where we're doing a a Carrera GT, a 4 liter, and a really interesting 993. And I'm going to look at a collection on Monday to hopefully list for a client on Bring a Trailer, including a 1990 ZR1, which is probably Tim's favorite car.
All right, Dave, you showed me when we were in your shop and guys, we are going to be getting to a lot of other topics here in a second, but I frankly find this section really interesting because I'm listening to what they're saying about what's going on in the automotive market. And there's a lot of dynamics that are at play right now because of tariffs, and new car pricing, frankly, is about to skyrocket, that we're going to see. And we're going to talk about this. We're going to give our opinions as to whether, well, bottom line is there's a very good chance that a lot of these cars these guys are talking about right now are going to go up substantially in value very soon. And I don't mean a little bit, I mean an absolute crap ton because of tariffs and the cost of new cars. We're going to be talking about that a lot in a second. But Dave had a car that actually surprised me. And Dave's car is a 1984 911 Targa. And the reason it surprised me is because in pictures, it's got this interior that would be, heck no, I would never want that. But in real life, it actually looked really cool. So, Dave?
I have become not the Tiger King, but I am the Targa King here at Sunderworks. So because I could not find my pith helmet, this is as close as I could get. So this is the Targa King pith helmet, and behind me is an 84 911 Targa that is in chiffon white. And when I bought this car, I found this car, it it needed a little bit of cosmetic stuff. The car was mechanically great, and it just, the interior was tired. A little front paint was a mismatch. It had, somebody had panel painted a front bumper, or excuse me, a front fender. And so we're not 100% done with this car. And you can see here in the picture behind me that we've got a little checklist, and we go through all these cars. Like, we're still going to refinish these wheels and so on. But I wanted at least a picture of the car to show you guys. But really sweet color combination with the brown. And then this is the interior we're talking about here.
Now,
So this is the,
I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop him because I know Paul's thinking what I was thinking before. I can't believe that someone put that into a car. But I have to say, in real life, it actually looks really cool because, and this is matchy matchy, you know, but the actual shade of the lighter tan that he's got there matches the paint color exactly. So someone spent a lot of time doing paint matching.
Yeah,
this
I
car's
like it.
great.
I do like it. It's
It's
got
cool.
kind of
I
a
mean,
Mexican blanket sort of vibe going, which
I mean, there's
exactly.
probably a marijuana odor in that thing that if it's not, it should be. I'm just saying, it's kind of the vibe.
I feel like if you put your feet on the floor mat, you'll feel like beach sand. It
Oh
just
yeah.
it
It's like
just
a
sort of
Mexican
screams like
blanket.
SoCal beach.
What did you say, Casey?
It's like a Mexican blanket.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I
it's
thought.
kind of a, we call it a boho, right? It's a little bohemian, you know, you can feel some patchouli oil maybe floating around as you're in this car, along mixed in with the marijuana. But it's a really sweet driving car, and it's got a, we did the Target top in brown convertible top vinyl, excuse me, not vinyl, and convertible top cloth as opposed to vinyl. And it
But this
really,
car's for sale, right,
it
Dave?
is.
This car's for sale. Okay.
It is. It's a high 60s car.
Right, which is an unbelievable bargain. And I'm telling you guys, when you go to see his cars at a shop, fly into Charlotte, go down to a shop, you'll be mesmerized as well. Especially if you're a snob like Paul on the West Coast and just used to having all this hoi polloi, you know, cheese and champagne experiences when you go to these Porsche shops where they rub your feet while you're waiting for it to pay for a $5,000 oil change. Go out and have a visit with Dave; it'll blow your mind. All right, let's move
Yeah, we're
on.
pinkies out all the time, baby.
Let's move on. Automotive news that caught your attention. And we probably could just focus on this because I frankly, this is teeing us up for a lot of the rest of the show. So I'm going to just read this straight up. So Porsche reported a 6% drop in global deliveries during, it's supposed to be Q1 of 2025, pulled down primarily by a 42% slump in China. You know, here nor there. Yet the U.S. market rose 10%. So the U.S. is continuing to be the Porsche's number one market, which is historically how it's always been, and setting an all-time high for a half-year sales in 19,812 units in Q2 alone. I'd be curious from Casey how many more sales that is versus when he was at the dealership, but that's a bullish sign for enthusiasts in North America. Bloomberg claims that Porsche is considering U.S. Final assembly as it was swiftly denied. The reason I am reading this to you guys is because we're talking about tariffs. So for now, production remains fully European, keeping a brand exposed to import tariffs, but keeping manufacturing tightly controlled in Germany and Austria. Porsche confirms a staggering $300 million or $351 million hit due to the 27.5% U.S. tariff. Now, why did I share this? Because again, we had a lot of listeners asking about tariffs. And so it's fascinating to watch with how the manufacturers are responding, because it wasn't a month ago that Porsche was saying they were thinking about building their SUVs in Tennessee. And that's where the Volkswagens are built. And I guess now they're not going to do that because they, you know, for whatever reasons. But at the end of the day, there's absolutely no reason to believe Even let's just say Japan just agreed to 15% tariffs. So if Germany settles in on 15%, let's just say that's the agreement that everyone has to essentially abide to because we're the number one market in the world. And if you want our customers, you're going to have to, we have all negotiation power over you. I cannot see how Porsche is going to absorb the 15% tariff. So faster than we all can imagine, that tariff is going to be passed on to consumers. And, right or wrong, personally, I'm not against tariffs. I know it's easy to say that you are because consumer prices are supposedly going to go up. But what we're seeing and what you're actually seeing in the economy is this additional money, what it's going to be used for, hypothetically, is negating anybody earning less than $200,000 a year won't have to pay federal income taxes anymore. And nobody's talking about that, but that was the original motivation behind the tariffs is making it so. Like I had a conversation last night with somebody, he's a Porsche guy, and he was all against tariffs for all the obvious reasons. And I was explaining to him that you won't have to pay taxes anymore, John. And he instantly became a pro-tariff guy. So I suspect when the word gets out how successful the tariffs have been actually at raising income for the U.S., people's attitudes will change. So remove the politics from it. Just look at the economics from it. And really, at the end of the day, this is something I think is going to dramatically affect. Like Dave, you're experiencing something with regards to tariffs now because you're stressing out about your GT3 RS prices going up. So
Yes, I am, because I don't want to pay another $80,000 for that GT3 RS. So let's just hope that this all gets worked out and that Porsche is smart and absorbs all these costs.
they're not
And
going to.
oh, I know. We'll
Well, I
see.
mean,
We'll see
but
what's going to happen. I don't know. And I think they're all frozen too, because nobody knows at the dealership. Nobody's gotten any information. All I got is the communication about the 3.8% increase or six or whatever it
right.
was.
Well, let's
But
talk, let's really drill down on the tariffs in an upcoming segment when we get to the viewer questions, if that's okay with you guys, because we had a very
sure.
specific question about that. But I just thought from automotive news perspective, I found that to be interesting. Porsche essentially saying they're not going to be building cars in the U.S., which I'm passing along to all of you, inevitably means there's going to be a fairly dramatic price increase in the prices of new Porsches, and they're not going to be able to absorb all that cost. And I'll tell you what I'll suspect is they're not going to have the tariffs are going to be paid by their highest end users. So the Cayennes and the lesser expensive, more meat and potatoes cars, are not going to be tariffed at all, or at least at the same level as, say, for example, your new GT3 RS that's going to cost however much it's going to cost. So, Paul, what did you have as far as interesting news? Because this is a very good, interesting thing that I thought was kind of sad, actually.
Well, I would talk really briefly about the Leno law, and I've talked, and it affects mostly California's, but as we've seen historically, when it comes to air quality, things like that, it ends up trickling into other states. Eventually, they adopt some of the California laws. We talked about it. It was supposed to be basically a rolling 35-year exemption of smog, which for us car people, awesome. Makes my job easier if I don't have to smog cars older than 1990 because of all the different implications and how hard it is. And, Jay Leno famously talks about, I spend more miles driving to places to get it smog than actually driving it. As I predicted, the law has gotten carved out, chopped up, all kinds of special interest. Where it lies today is right now before this law, anything 75 and older was smog exempt. You could have your black plates, you could have your blue plates, whatever. In 76 and newer, you had to smog it. Now, the historical vehicle plate's been around for a long time. It's pretty much had no impact. It's just my dad had one on his Austin Healey because he thought it was cool. And I was like, Dad, this is the ugliest plate in the world. Why not put a yellow plate or a black plate that would be period correct for your car? The law, which will go into effect January of 27, basically says that cars now 76 to 81 will be exempt. And you have to have this historical plate on your car, and you have to have classic car insurance, which basically says you're allowed to use it for certain cases, which in the end I think is fine. I would say the people that would probably be the most upset is if you have a 76 to 81 car that you want a cool blue plate or you want a California Sunshine plate or some cool plate. You're not going to have that. And then it's going to every year add one more year, but it stops at 86. And my problem, and the biggest thing is all air-cooled Porsches are a nightmare to smog. And when you get to the 993 era, it is, especially the very Ram cars, 96 to 98. I get one of those cars and I just pray we sell it out of state because I do not want to deal with smog. But I guess it's better than nothing. You know, we
But
got,
Paul, didn't they carve it out so it's only for I think you mentioned it, but it was originally supposed to be cars this age or older, but now it's just like this tiny little window of I mean,
well, yeah, but
explain
it was
that.
supposed to be 1990, basically 35 years rolling. So
Right.
right now it would be 1990 and older would be exempt. And it would just keep going on. And within 8 years, all air-cooled Porsches are exempt, which would be fantastic. Now what they did was they narrowed it from rolling 35 years to we're adding 5 years right on the front end, 76 to 90, 81. And then we're going to add a year after that to stop at 86. Now, my hope is in the next 5, 7 years that they realize that it's not even about air quality anymore. It's going to generate enough revenue that they're going to want to continue to do it because people will stop registering out of state. They'll do, they'll get tax revenue, they'll get registration revenue. The plates will be more expensive, but car people, we will spend. I mean, people will spend $500 to get a fake smog. How much would they spend to register it and legally do it? It is a baby step, which in 20 years of them fighting this, it's better than no step, but it's still somewhat disappointing.
Yeah, it is disappointing. The original way it was proposed and that Jay was promoting it made complete sense. And I'd be really curious about how that actually works out. And I love your optimism, but I'm not optimistic
Yeah.
about how
And
Californians are sorting it out.
and people who aren't in California, what they should be afraid of is these kind of laws. Like people have sort of forgot about the smog laws in California. Now this comes up. I'm curious. I mean, there's some counties in other states, like in Salt Lake City, where they have sort of these draconian smog laws that copy California. I'm just afraid that other states will look at this and go, oh, yeah, we used to be rolling 20 year. Let's just do this and we'll create more revenue. Not because of air, but because of revenue. And that's
Well,
my fear is other states will go after this too.
and that's how the whole country becomes Montana.
Yeah.
You know, that's
But
that's
on the other hand, I mean, not just California, so many states are really cracking down on Montana. I mean, it's the conversation at, our version of water cooler conversation. It's at Cars and Coffee. To the
well,
point, like I mentioned, they put little booties over their plates when they park because they don't want to be targeted.
but Paul, from a different perspective, only states like California give a rat's ass about Montana. If you go to the rest of the country, I'm
There's
just
other states, Georgia.
yeah, but you're talking again. This is going to sound political really, really fast, and I don't want to be political. But yes, you're right. The blue states are the ones that are very focused on that. Most of the red states don't care. And if you drive, for example, if you drive around with Montana plates in Texas, they don't care. If you drive around with Montana plates in North Carolina, they don't care. Tennessee, they don't care. So it's basically, there is a political bend to it, and I don't want to make this a political show because, frankly, I don't care about politics. So you guys we can debate that another day. All right. So Casey is finally coming around to drinking the red Kool-Aid. I see from your notes you want to finally admit that you are now becoming a Ferrari enthusiast because of the F80.
So I am a Chris Harris fan. Um, and I will probably start and end this conversation there. But Chris Harris made me, and Paul, why don't you talk for a second because I don't have my a picture up for it.
Yeah, well, I watched that same episode, and I too am a Chris Harris fan. And the fact that if you watch that episode, I mean, he's wearing his favorite shirt, the Tamaya, which is, if you're into it, it's like model cars stuff. He's such a car nerd guy, but if you look in the video, everyone's dressed sort of, press, and that's how he's dressed. He's dressed the way I would dress. So I could relate. And this was, by the way, a car I could give, you know, two shits about. I could care less because it's a Ferrari. But I enjoyed that video. It was really good. But talk more about the video, Casey.
Yes, so Chris really dives deep in a lot of the engineering. There's a lot of stuff that he talked about that I had no idea, and you could clearly see the stuff. I mean, while I will always root for Porsche at Le Mans, having Ferrari hat trick it like with their LMP car or their hypercar rather, seeing them win that And basically, they incorporated a tremendous amount of the technology that they learned from that program into this car. Means a lot for me because, you know, when they turned race cars into street cars, kind of like we were talking about what we wanted Porsche to do with the 963, that likely won't happen. That makes me excited. And it makes me excited that Chris Harris was excited. I also think the car, as I'm staring at it more, looks more like a Group C car, which is a big thing for me because that's one of my favorite eras in motorsport, hence the name of my company. So I basically, this is an advertisement for Dave at Sonderworks for everybody to do business with him, and also for everybody to watch the Chris Harris video. And lastly, the most recent PCA podcast was really awesome. Tim pointed out, and I was texting with Vu the other day, but they had Alois and Aloisa Roof on, which reminded me a lot about Paul's visit. And honestly, it was a great episode. So I really, everybody check out PCA Insider podcast, the most recent one about the Roof family. It was wonderful.
It was beautiful, actually.
very moving.
Yes, it
And
was.
I won't spoil the thing about how Alois met Estonia, but it was a great story. I really recommend everybody listen to it
I mean,
after
if
you
you
finish this one.
what I love most about it is what Paul was explaining. I loved Paul. You said after you were visiting Roof and you and your and Edward, your dad, were leaving, and then he saw that you were leaving, and he was in his office, and he runs out, and it basically gives you guys a hug and the whole thing. I don't know. There's not too many automotive experiences or with people like that that exist anymore. Most of them, when they get to that level of success, they become a little stuffy, a little standoffish. I don't know, whatever words you want to use. But it seems like him and his family have gone in the exact opposite direction. That's
Yeah.
pretty special. And you can tell when you listen to that PCA podcast.
Yeah, and that PCA podcast definitely emulates what they're about. And what was so, I mean, stuck out to me is, first of all, if I was Alois in Estonia, the daughter is just genuinely passionate. Like, you could see legs for the company. The leader is, it's going to be a different direction. It'll be a great direction. But the biggest thing is, and this says a lot about a company, and Dave, running a company with a bunch of employees, you can understand this. They're in the middle of nowhere, and they have attracted some of the top talent out of the auto manufacturers that are young. Young people want to live in metropolitan areas. They don't want to live in a farmland. And they've got a lot of young people with some great senior leaders. And I'm looking at that like, if you're drawing in these people, and by the way, I'm sure they don't pay as well for employees as maybe the, BMW or Porsche, but you're doing something right if you're attracting that talent and that passion. So it's not just this facade of, oh, here's a customer, or here's someone who can influence future customers. It's just, you can tell it's embroidered into what they are and what they do, and they are so damn passionate about it, which I appreciate, and which carries through. And by the way, going back, Casey, the best part about that video, if you watched, Chris Harris was genuinely afraid of drifting this car. I don't know if anyone's drifted the F80, but I knew he was talented, but that car looks really hard to drift. And in one day, he is doing the most insane drifts in a what, $4 million car.
He's the best.
Bravo.
He is
Way
the
more
best.
balls than I got.
Like,
Well,
I remember following him when he was on Drivers Republic a zillion years ago and followed his career. And there's nobody better in this game than Chris Harris.
well, of course, his last name's Harris. You guys seem surprised. Come on, let's move on here. All right, let's
You know
move
what's
on to
funny?
the
Every time, Tim, you text me, I just see Harris. I go, he's finally calling me. And I go, oh, it's Tim.
Oh,
Just
thank you for
kidding.
that.
Just kidding.
I never feel that way about you, Paul. Wow.
You don't think it's the German Kramers that are building 935s?
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's move on to our third segment. It's this or that ideal daily driver, and I'm going to go last. So let's put Dave up first, and this is where we actually had a question. We had two questions about this. What would be an ideal daily driver? This seems like this is on everyone's mind. I don't know about, I mean, I'm almost embarrassed to admit this, but I spend way too much time on online car auction sites. Oh, by the way, we need to address a question that someone had. We were talking last week about, or the week before, about why bring a trailer is appropriate for some auctions. And you guys, please hold me accountable. Jump in if I forget to bring this up, versus cars and bids. So why choose one auction over the other? So let's make sure we circle in and make that relevant so we can answer that listener's question. All right. So with regards to this or that ideal daily driver, Dave, you are going first.
I am, and like Paul, I am kind of fascinated with this value proposition of finding these daily driver type cars that at some point in their lives were like, you know, the pinnacle of automotive engineering, or they were high dollar cars that were sort of halo cars, and suddenly now you can buy one of these things for $12,000 or $15,000. So this particular car that I'm showing here, if you're on YouTube, '05 BMW C645 convertible. I had the next year of this car, '06. And it was a 3 year time that I had the car. I enjoyed the hell out of that car. I thought it was a fantastic car. Loved it. You know, I'm not a convertible guy normally. It's tough to drive a convertible in the heat of the summer here in the Carolinas, but I really loved that car. And this one went for, I want to say $15,000, something like that, 15, $16,000 with 20K original miles. I mean, that is still a very attractive car. Now, some people were kind of turned off by the headlights on the front. I'm not a big fan per se of that treatment of the kidney grill during that particular couple of years on these cars. It wasn't my favorite tweak to the BMW kidney grill, but that's a hell of a lot of car for $15,000. So that's one. And then, you know, I figured I still have to kind of ode to Paul here and the Jaguar stuff. So similar deal, right? So this car I think is out of Palm Springs, and this
Of
car
course.
sold for 20 grand, right? And well, look at the color even. It's probably, again, it's an 80-year-old woman who drove this and put 18,000
You know,
miles on
that
it.
that's paint to sample Azuro Thesis, whatever
Exactly,
they
from
call
Actually,
Lamborghini.
it.
Exactly.
it's paint to sample old person white hair, with a little blue tinge.
Yeah. I mean, I think this one sold for 20. I think that's the number. And my poor eyesight is failing me here. It might have been a little over 20, but 18,000 mile coupe. You know, that Jaguar during this period, I think Ford owned during this period of
Mhm.
time. And you get in this car and you can look around and see a lot of Ford bits. And, you know, it still has a bit of a, you know, that the interiors didn't really hold up to the sort of traditional Jaguar coachworks, but it's still a very handsome car. I mean, you know, it looks kind of like a 2000s, a more early 2000s car, but I think it's still kind of a handsome car. And
So,
I,
so
I
we
have no
have
trouble jumping in that.
we have an aesthetically challenged BMW versus a Jaguar XK.
Geriatric, a
All right, so
geriatric XK coupe.
all right, so Casey, which would you choose? By the way, it's pretty funny how Dave was trying to sell us both. Okay.
I mean, they're both like SPCA, I think is where my money would go, but you know, I look at it, I would probably go for the BMW just because there are more BMW dealerships to fix it when it breaks, and Jaguar's probably going to go out of business or get bought by somebody else. But yeah, I'd probably go the BMW route on it because at least the top goes down.
Paul.
Ugh, I hate convertibles. I'm sorry. But here's the thing is that era BMW, the M5 is not that much more money, or sorry, M6, and the M6 with the right exhaust sound with that V10 sounds like an F1 car. So if you would have thrown up an M6 coupe versus the XKR in not, octogenarian turquoise, and put it in like British racing green, those cars look better dark. They really look better as a dark color. Um, Having a Jaguar, the XK8, you got to get this once again, the XKR with the supercharged motor. I'm tempted to pony up and match dollar for dollar Casey with the SPCA donation, but I guess I'll
Oh,
choose the
come
BMW.
on, come
But hold
on.
on, hold on, hold on. So you're saying that generation BMW M6 you can get with a V10 that's 20 grand?
I would say you get more miles instead of like 18, 20,000 miles. I would rather get like a 70,000 mile one that's had all the nanos and all the crap that is going to go wrong on that. This is a case, going back to what Casey said, don't buy the miles, buy the owners. I would rather have a one, two owner, enthusiast own M6 with higher miles that's had all of that stuff done. And by the way, Jaguar dealer, BMW dealer, you don't want to go with a 20-year-old car. You don't want to go to the dealer for either of these cars. You want to go
They
to an
probably
enthusiast shop.
look. I was trying to get our low miles 2000 or 1993 Mazda Miata serviced. I just want to have timing belts and all the normal stuff. I mean, it's just been sitting in our barn. And I called 3 Mazda dealerships and none of them wanted to work on it. What the hell? I mean,
But
I
there's
can do most.
probably a ton of Mazda independent shops that work on those cars.
That's what I
Probably
found.
some, yeah, which by the way, I've always, once a car gets to be like 10 years old, 10 years old or older, the good mechanics that know that have already left the dealership and then started their own shops or working an independent. And in my opinion, dealing with all the cars, the only reason I go to the dealer is it's a fairly new car, it's under warranty or recall, and I find that when you get to 10 years old, the best mechanics are not at the dealer anymore.
For sure. They're
Yeah,
all
there
working for Dave, basically. That's what my observation was. All right.
there
So,
was a let me real quick when it comes to that M5 or M6, another Chris Harris thing. If you follow him on Instagram, he's doing a complete refurbishment of his M5 V10 wagon, and it's done by this group in England called Everything M-Power, who is awesome. They talked to me for like an hour and a half about their Brun 962 at Rennsport reunion, but check that out on his Instagram because they're going real deep.
maybe we get them. Casey, if you got a relationship, let's try to get them on the show. That sounds like it'd be a really good, fun topic. Have a guest.
So
All right,
guys,
let's move.
both cars, you're trying to tell me that neither of you would take either of these cars.
No,
So isn't this
I
the
said I'd
game?
do the
The game
BMW.
is supposed to be that we bring the cars and you pick one of those two cars.
Well, I'm with
You don't
Casey.
tell me that I shouldn't have brought it.
I would do the BMW too because it's a true 4-seater and it's a convertible. So I'm with Casey on
I
that.
guess I'll go the Jaguar because I have a Jaguar.
Okay,
Yeah,
You
exactly.
feel
excellent.
better
Okay.
now, Dave?
Oh God, I feel so much better now.
Well, and also Paul relates to that 80-year-old woman, and that's
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
he's kind of that's his vibe. So
That's
I
my
get it.
hangout scene for sure. Go to the PCA meetings at our chapter.
That's his jam. All right, so who is next? Did Dave. Let's do Paul next since he's teed up with his beautiful BMW M5 Touring. So Paul, go for it.
Well, I picked 3 because once again, we talked about this. I'm like the rest of you guys. I love daily driver ideas, even though I don't need a daily driver. So I chose 2 different cars, 3 actually. One was a Cadillac, but I'll leave that one out. This is an E34 Touring. It was until the current generation, the only time you could get an M5 Touring. They didn't do it for the E39. They didn't do it for the other cars until the current one. And I've come this close to buying it, and it was really the California smog that kind of scared me at the time, as before I had the Auto Kennel dealership. This one sold recently, bring a trailer, 102,000 miles. It's in one of my favorite colors, Daytona Violet Metallic, which, in my opinion, if you're getting an E34 Touring, you've got to get a crazy color. I think that was sort of iconic with it. And these cars just, they have cool sports seats that kind of have a purple tint to them. They have, obviously, I think are they 5-speed manual transmission. They only came that way, and they have that glorious individual throttle body, straight 6, 3.5 liter. That is ironically so good. It ends up in so many other cars like E9s and E30s. But are generally not loved in the E34 except for the Touring. So this one sold for 54,000 with 102,000 miles. And my other choice was this 2013 Porsche Panamera Turbo S. It has 26,000 miles, sold for 54,000. So they're both the same price. This one's got 26,000 miles. It's, oh gosh, 30 years newer. 20 years newer. 7-speed PDK. The turbos didn't get the automatic. They got the PDK. This one has everything: ceramic brakes, Porsche dynamic chassis, full leather. It's painted metallic orange. The interior at first, because the photos I don't think were great, looked weird. It's actually platinum and black. So like this angle, it looks doable. This, they must have had the flash on and it looks kind of greenish. Here's the dilemma is if what I would choose, I want to say what I'm going to choose, but the problem is, I think the E34 M5 is great if you need like that one car solution. I need a kid hauler, I need a daily driver, I want something to go to Cars and Coffee, go to the mountains. Like it kind of does everything. It's manual, it's engaging, it's analog. And I think this is something that you already have a manual weekend toy, but you want something a little fun for
Well,
daily.
but so it's this or that, right? So it's your absolutely hideous, unbelievably ugly Porsche versus that amazing BMW Touring where everything's
Let me
perfect.
guess, you like silver, black, gray,
Oh, I love it.
Panameras.
You took that personal. That's awesome. So, Casey, what would you choose, the BMW or the Porsche?
As a guy that sold that Panamera new, and had dealt with customers when they come in to complain about servicing costs and those sorts of things, because before owning a 964, my general opinion is there was nothing more expensive in the Porsche realm to service than a Panamera, especially when they become like $15,000 cars and it's a Panamera S rear drive from 2010. Anyway, I digress. BMW all day, every day.
Okay, well, I'm going to throw this in there. So if you were buying this as a daily driver and you had kids and you had a dog and your wife was going to drive it occasionally, and I think, truthfully, the Panorama is going to be a hell of a lot safer than that BMW is going to be. Just modern crash standards, brakes, passive, all that Mickey Mouse. I don't know if that factors in because to Casey's point, all that crap's going to be probably broken or be breaking at this point, which is going to make it so that it becomes a dead car. But, things to consider. Dave, you're up. What would you choose between the Porsche and the BMW?
Certainly like Casey, we service a lot of these cars. We service a lot of the Panameras. These early gen cars have now the price has fallen out the bottom. I mean, you can buy one, you can buy a 10, 11, 12 for, under $15,000.
That is
Uh,
incredible,
we
honestly.
we roll, but when they roll up for service, and I literally say this, if I happen to be up front when one of those cars rolls into the driveway, I'm looking at, my guys going, oh, this could be a problem. The air suspension is notoriously bad on these cars. We replace a lot of air struts on these cars.
No, Dave, you
Um,
should be looking at it going, oh, cool, it rolled up. I'm going to service that thing and then I'm going to go buy that.
Give me the money.
It probably should be doing that, but it keeps me, when those roll up, it keeps me from servicing the ones I really want to be servicing, which are the cool classical air cooled cars, right? Now, having said all that, I would probably take the Panamera. I owned an 11. That was not my favorite car. I didn't like the six. We only had the base on that car, and I found that car at least that this was an 11, so it was early car. I didn't like the way the transmission shifted in that car, and we got out of that car. My wife was really the driver, and we got out of that car pretty quickly. I love the color on this one, though. I mean, this is a sweet color. I mean, it's just unusual. I think with that interior combo, I truly do like the newer gen, and I don't care for that rear window on the first gen version of this car. That little hitch up at the back there just doesn't work with the lines for me on the car. But
Mhm.
still, having said that, reasonably low mileage. It's going to need some stuff. But guess what? I own a Porsche shop, so I can fix it. I go with that one.
All
So,
right, Paul. So
oh,
what are you going to
oh,
choose, the BMW
Well,
or the Porsche?
Casey, really quick, if the Porsche Panamera was a Sport Turismo magically, it had the wagon look, would you have chosen? I mean, definitely, I would have chosen that. But would
the la-
you?
the later gen cars were way better, but I'm going to give
Yeah.
you one nerdy Porsche history thing. The reason why the roof works looks that way from how it was conveyed to me is Vita King, when they were developing that car, was 6'4",
Yep.
and he had to be able to sit in every seat in the car
And not hit his head.
comfortably without moving the other seats. So
Yep.
that is why the roof is sculpted that way in those cars. And when they debuted them, they had four 6.5 foot tall blonde models get out of the car comfortably, and
Yeah.
that's how they showed the car off.
Yeah.
That car in the yacht spec, so yachting blue with the yachting blue and cream interior with with the mahogany boat wood inside, that'd have been a different story. Sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead.
I mean, me personally, I would pick the Panamera because I have plenty of manual cars in my life, and although these are just iconic, cool, going back to meet your heroes, is what were these like a 200, 300 horsepower car. They were relatively light. They were like 3,500 pounds. Um, and I think these cars look cool, they're iconic, but in the end, living in a LA area, metropolitan area, driving around in one of these would be much easier. Any of my family members could easily use it. I'd be less worried about it. And by the way, the mechanical bills on a E34, especially that individual throttle body engine, not cheap. Not cheap. I think it would rival Panamera ownership for sure, if not more. So Panamera for me.
I'll keep my answer succinct. I was gonna obviously go with the BMW. It's for sure.
I knew
Yeah,
you would.
I would. And but I'd find one where all the big bills have already been paid because the cars from that generation, and I'm not gonna, talk too long about it, but the cars from that generation, what was it that Bangle got the job at BMW? Everything post Bangle, it just, after the E36s, after the E34s, all the cars after that just got really strange looking. So,
Yep.
That E34 touring, beautiful car. I love wagons. All right. So Casey, you're up next.
So the car behind me is a poster car, and I picked cars that I knew Paul would not like in boring colors because really like I wanted to rile you up, Tim, but I think we're just going to rile Paul up this episode. So
Excellent.
so car one is and I picked these because I'm going out to lunch today after the podcast with one of my favorite clients from my previous life, and he has an insane Audi collection, and they're all, other than his RS4, like the car that's behind me, they're all Nogaro blue. We actually got Nogaro blue approved through the paint to sample process for him back in 2017, which was a lot of fun. So car one is a 2002 or 2001 Audi RS4 wagon. This is a one that closed on Bring a Trailer with I think it was like roughly 80 or 90,000 miles, some kilometer equivalent. And this car is an Avis Silver Pearl Effect, and it went for 72 grand, somewhere in there. You would probably want to spend about 100 on one of these, but our goal today was to keep it under 75. So that's car number one. And while we were talking about cars that cost an insane amount of money to service, let's go to the other one because, of course, this is a Porsche podcast. This is an example of your car could be worth a lot more if you spent money with good photography on Bring a Trailer. This is whenever year they made these, 92, 93, 94 Audi RS2. A lot of this
96. I think it's a late one.
96. Oh,
Yeah,
it's a
it's a
late
late
one.
one. Yeah.
So these cars were really developed by Porsche in a time where Porsche wasn't making any money and spending a bunch of time making cars for other people. So I'm a 964 guy, so you can see it kind of has, I guess, 964 or 993 turn lenses. It has Cup 1 wheels. It has Brembo brakes from some sort of 964, and it also has cup mirrors. This one is, I don't know what the color is, effectively reflex silver, something like that, Arctic silver. But I think it's a beautiful car. I've always loved these. I don't think I've ever seen one in person. I've never driven one. I know that Doug DeMuro had one and had interesting things to say about it, even though he doesn't own it anymore. So those are my two choices. This one also sold for that 70 to 80 range.
65.5. So after fees,
65.5.
yeah.
Yeah, so right around in that same era. Oh boy, Paul pulled it out behind him. I was going to put my Nagara blue one up. But anyway, that's it. RS4 or RS2 early generation cars.
Those are
And
awesome.
the RS4s, were they all manuals or did they come
All
automatic?
manuals,
Okay.
2.7 liters with Cosworth heads,
Yep.
330, 40 horsepower, 20 horsepower, something like that.
Okay.
So,
Well, I
So
guess I'll
Tim, why
go.
don't you, well, Tim, why don't you go first?
Yeah.
Because
uh,
this is something I figured would pique your interest because you have
well,
an RS6, which I didn't know.
yeah, we have an RS6 Avant. So I am an Audi enthusiast, and I do love the wagons. And I'm trying to think which I'd like. I have to say, I didn't know the older versions of those cars had literally all those Porsche parts. I didn't realize that it
Yeah,
had the turn signals.
the intake manifold on this car says powered by Porsche.
Yeah.
That's badass.
There is very little that's Audi besides the unibody. I mean, when I sold that one, it was shocking how much, like, the Mercedes 500e was Porsche built, and it was a lot of Porsche, but nowhere near as much as the Audi RS2 in terms of how much Porsche was on there.
Can you buy part before I answer you?
No,
No. Okay.
no, fucking nightmare. Sorry. I mean, it's the
Beep,
plastic. I
beep,
mean,
beep.
everything from coil packs to plastic trim, to window switches. The window switches break. You know, Porsche, you can go buy window. Any company you could buy window switches. For whatever reason, I think Porsche employees were worried that their job was threatened. That's why they took this project on for the RS2. And I think they made everything unique. The timing belt is unique because they put a bigger water pump in it, and it's a special timing belt with an extra tooth. The coil packs are, I love the RS2, but oh my God, it just the pain of ownership. So the window switches, it's not a matter of like, oh, it's not one touch anymore. You have to take them apart, rebuild this shitty plastic and solder stuff to get window switches. And by the way, that may not actually fix the problem. So anyway, but enjoy.
Not a great, well, it's a great daily driver if you can, ride your horse to work, is what you're saying.
But a 964 RS2 is literally drives like a 964 wagon. I mean, it is really remarkable. That's the bittersweet, kind of gut kick about it. Is it just is you're like, please, why not drive like crap? So then my dilemma is solved.
All
That's
right.
the
So what I would do is I would look for $100,000 dollar, very, very nice RS2, the ones that we were just talking about. And I would try to haggle them down to 75 grand so that I could meet the requirements. That's what I would do.
But that is the right approach, Tim, because like the one we sold, he bought it for like 60 because the good ones were 100 grand, 100 to 110 that were sorted. He bought it for 60 and proceeded to put another 60 in it to sell it for 75.
That sounds like my 964 experience.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a
We all
lot of
have those horrible,
964 in there.
we all have those horrible experiences. All right. So I guess that's my answer is I would go with the Porsche derived RS2. I think now I'm the last player here, so I'll make mine really short, right? Everyone else went, they did. All right. So I don't have any flashy pictures to put up, but I'll keep this succinct because I think clearly, given the overall not very good job that these guys did with their this or that daily driver for under 75 grand, I think they both were all of them were a little bit lazy on their options. I'm absolutely the clear winner with my two choices, which is between a G80 BMW M3 manual for 65 or 75 grand or an Alpha Giulia Quadrifoglio. And I'll sell you guys on both, but not too long. You know both cars. The Alpha is 2018 to 2022 from 50 to 65. You can get a newer Quadrifoglio for around 75 grand. And before you guys start crapping on the Alpha and the rest of it, do understand, of course, you could do this with the BMW too, and this is what you can do. Because the Stellantis family offers ridiculously long extended warranties from the factory. You can actually extend the bumper to bumper warranty on the Alpha, provided there's Alpha dealerships to work on it, to go something like 10 years or like 150,000 miles. And it's not very much money. It's like $3,500 or $4,500. So that should negate for most people the fear of, being stuck with the dead Alpha. And I also should say that my wife's car is a Giulia Quadrifoglio, and she may have had some influence on my choice. But between the two, I also say this: the Alpha is, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful modern sedans. In addition to that, the motor is a Ferrari-derived motor and supposedly built by Ferrari. It's the motor that was in the California and the Portofino with two less cylinders. And it does feel like that too when you drive it. Has all the Ferrari characteristics, mechanically speaking. Now, obviously, you get into it, and the touch points aren't as what from a Ferrari. It's way nicer. But as far as the Alpha goes, there you go. So BMW or Alpha, Paul, you go first.
As the owner of Daily Driver being a 928 and a Jaguar, I love the Russian roulette of will I get there in my Daily Driver? I have to pick the Alpha, even though, and definitely with a warranty. But I do love those cars, but I am drawn to difficult ownership experiences, even with a warranty. But I would take the Quadrifoglio.
Yeah, and ours is never broken down. And as a surprise to Julie, hold on, surprise to Julie, I put high flow cats on it. So, and I didn't tell her. So she was going on the morning school run and I was videotaping it. She starts it up. And it's super loud. And I just watched her face look at me and she knew what I had done because I've done that before. All right. So Paul, or yeah, I'm sorry, Dave, what would you choose between the two?
Uh, First, is there any Alfa Romeo that is still $60,000 even after it was new? That got like 8 to 22 and that car's 60 grand. I
No,
would
no,
have
no.
thought that car.
The quadrifolios in they're still selling those now, but the new ones were you could get one in the US, mainland for about 90 grand. That's what they cost new. So you could probably find, I'm sure you could find a 2024 quad for probably 85 grand. I'm sure you could.
Okay, that said, I would be just terribly afraid of the depreciation on this car, no matter what. If I'm going to buy this at 50, $60,000, still a lot of money to throw out. I got to go with the BMW. I'll keep my answer succinct. The BMW is a great car. Alpha is a great car. Don't really love the grill on the Alpha. Don't really love the grill on the BMW. It's appearance wise, I'm sure they're both fantastic cars to drive. Obviously, 500 plus horsepower on the Quattrofolio, but I got to go with the BMW.
Got it. Casey, your turn.
I had two clients with less than stellar Julia experiences, which I heard a lot about. So I'm going BMW, and I'll just leave it there.
All right. Well, you guys are all wrong. The answer is Alpha. If you don't believe me, ask my wife. All right. So we're going to move on to a new segment. I want to really get to what is our next segment, guys? Oh, no, we did. We've nailed this one. All
We
right.
were talking
So
about spoilers of wings, but is that enough time to really?
yeah,
I don't know
let's
if we
skip
have.
spoilers and wings.
We've got
And
a
let's
lot to cover.
yeah, I want to talk. Let's just go. You guys want to hold off on the 997 buyer guide? You guys want to do that? Do we have time or hold off?
Let's hold off. That'll get deep because we have the chairman of PCA 997 with us. So we'll
I
have
should
to.
never have told you guys that.
Oh,
I really
yeah.
shouldn't have.
Well, so His Royal Highness will be doing a dissertation on 997s with great detail, and that'll be on next week's Full Throttle Talk. So I want to. So we
40
did have,
point
might-
PowerPoint presentation for
Might
sure.
need to be. I would want to hold off on that until Paul's back.
Yeah.
The
true.
997 talk.
no. Paul's gonna be smart enough not to be there because even he will get bored. But that's aside.
I think I'm going to like him under the drug induced Paul could be a lot of fun on that conversation, though.
He'll pull an Ed.
Yeah.
A strategic nap. All right. So let's talk about this. This is we've had a lot of questions. This has been a big topic in my automotive life amongst my friends about the whole situation with regards to tariffs. And I mean, Casey, I know you have really done a lot of research on this, and I don't want to take any anecdotal information and cloudy the facts, but I think we talked about this a little bit before. I'm going to give an example from the Ferrari world. So in the Ferrari world, we talked about it again. Luxury manufacturers are going to be pushing the tariffs on to customers. And that's not just going to be for manufacturers of cars, it's going to be manufacturers of everything. So don't be surprised if all of a sudden, all your fancy stuff, if you even are into luxury items, are marketably more expensive because the luxury consumer will absorb the cost. I'll tell you guys a really interesting story real quick. It's probably not true, but it's a fun story. You guys know what Richard Mille watches are? The big blocky ones? Okay. So it's probably, again, maybe just a story. So originally, when he was introducing his first watch, he hired a PR company to come out with an ad. And I'm going to condense this as fast as I can. And the ad was obviously advertising this new watch by this French watchmaker and beautiful, beautiful, all these things. The ad was done perfectly. And he put it in, I forget what magazine it was. So supposedly the price of the watch in the ad was listed as $135,000. People then saw the ad, saw the watch. Again, this guy had no brand name. Maybe the customers, the viewers of the ad were, buying Rolexes or buying whatever expensive watches they were. So boom, all of a sudden this crazy looking watch comes to market for $135,000. And then he instantly sells out of all these launch watches that he came out with. And now they're worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. But here's the story, the aspect of the story I think is interesting. It's believed that the actual price of that watch wasn't 135,000, but it was $13,500. And it was a misprint. But when they were able to sell their watch that they originally had planned on retailing for 13,500 for 135,000, they said, well, guess what? That's the price. And then this, essentially carry that story forward, and that's what they're selling. It's low batch or small batch watches for extraordinary prices. What that does is it really drills down, even if it's just a made up story, it really does emphasize the fact that luxury consumers have massive price elasticity and will easily absorb the tariff prices. That is what Ferrari is going to do. That is what Porsche on their upper end cars are going to do. So, and I could drill down more on numbers, but if you're in the market for a GT3 RS, ask Dave, or if you're in the market for a new Ferrari, like Ferrari started out by absorbing the price of the tariffs on the 296s and the SF90s. Well, now the 296 Speciale comes out. And what Ferrari does is they say there's going to be a surcharge, is what they're calling it, on the 296 Speciales that has raised the base price from 470 to 510. So you now have these Speciales that are going to essentially be hitting the market. The real base price of the tariff, the owner contributing portion of it of 8.5% is 510. Then you have options. Then you have whatever your local taxes are. So by the time those cars hit the road, those are going to be mid sixes cars. And that's before the complete tariff has been pushed back to the customer, which will probably eventually be 15%. So if you're wondering what direction prices are going on new cars, especially luxury cars, they're absolutely going to go up because the manufacturers know that the customer will absorb it. Now, on lower price cars, what the government originally intended to have happen was those cars would start being made in the United States, and that is what's happening. Because the lower price customer, the average normal price car, those customers are not going to absorb that. And if you're, say, for example, Toyota, and you're selling I know Camrys are, bad example, choose whatever Toyota you want to that's made in Japan still. If you're selling a car that costs 15% more than an equivalent Honda, and the Honda's made in the United States, you're at a competitive disadvantage. That's going to force you to open up a facility to make the cars in the United States. That was the original plan, and that's actually what's already starting to work. Again, I'm not trying to be political because I really don't like that. When you turn an automotive show and talking about politics, it just sounds silly. But at the end of the day, the tariff regime ultimately was created to make it so that people earning less than $200,000 a year in federal taxes don't have to pay federal taxes anymore. And not only is that working because the amount of money that's being raised from tariffs and the amount of new manufacturing facilities that are opening up in the United States, it's working faster than it was originally intended, proving all the naysayers wrong. So, Casey, without any further vamping, let's hear what you've learned about how Porsche is going to be handling tariffs.
So the question, first of all, I'm not going to talk about politics at all. So we're good there. With Ferrari, did the base price go up, or is there a secondary charge at the bottom of the thing that, like with transportation fee?
So a friend of mine, I was wondering that too. And so this was, I cut and paste this from a conversation I was having. Base price of the Ferrari 296 Speciale is 470. Ferrari is charging the buyer 8.5%, making the buyer pay a portion of the tariff. That brings the starting real world price to 509,950. On top of that, there's an additional cost of $760 for, delivery and all the Mickey Mouse. And so what they're doing is it's actually called, someone sent me a screenshot, Casey, of something that was only supposed to be shared with the dealers. This is the Ferrari dealers. And it actually said that the customers are going to be charged 8.5. It's called owner contribution or surcharge. They're not calling it, we're making the customer pay the tariff. They gave it some other name because I think there's a reason why they couldn't actually say we're pushing the tariff onto the customer. But to your question, it does appear that the negotiated tariff price is going to be 15%. That does seem to be the target tariff that the government's going for with manufacturers of imported cars. And that means that the Ferraris will go up in price, as will most everything else, by at least 15. Well, for Ferrari, it's going to be an additional 6.5% to make it to 15. But really, everybody else, if, like, for example, Porsche is only charging 3.5%, you have to assume that price is going to go up by 12%. On the more expensive Porsches, because they're not going to absorb that as a less profit. What is your opinion?
So that kind of didn't answer my question, because, and I don't think you know the answer, because
Probably not.
So the way Porsche treats it, and I've got being that I have a Porsche background, I have some friends that are in different capacities at dealerships and all over the place. Basically, Cayenne and Macan ice cars, so gasoline powered Cayenne and Macans, 2.3% is charged from the way that I have interpreted this information. Keep in mind, I don't work for Porsche. I've been a while since I've worked for Porsche, so I can't speak for them. But 2.3% is being added to everything. So base price, options, all those things. All other vehicles, the base price and all the options are being charged 3.6%. On top of that, that gets basically, it goes um, on top of the whatever they had planned for the 2026 model year. So I looked at a little bit of history. Porsche ate the tariff. Porsche Cars North America is the importer of cars from Porsche in Germany. They are the people that are responsible for paying the tariff. And the German, to my knowledge, the biggest German export is automobiles. So it's important. I'm not sure if Germany is helping out Porsche Cars North America. That information will never be shared. But during the months of April, May, and June, from some math that I did, Porsche delivered roughly 1,200 cars, right? Porsche ate the tariff on all of those cars. So let's say that the tariff was, let's say it was 10,000 or 10,000 cars and $10,000 per car. Okay. Do the math. That's a lot of money. So Porsche, when they announced the 2026 pricing, from what I researched, Car and Driver quoted the base price of a 911 Carrera at 129,950. I don't know if that was including or not including the destination charge. For those who don't know, the destination charge is the average amount that it costs to ship any Porsche from any port to any dealership in the United States. They average out that number. They put that on there. I don't know. It was hard for me to interpret whether or not these numbers that I am working off of, being that I don't have access to Porsche software anymore, include or do not include that figure. So in 2023, the base price of a 911 coupe, we're just talking straight 911 coupes. So it was a 992.1 was $106,100. The biggest price change that I ever saw, and I would work through this time, was when they went from 23 to 24. That was when all of the inflation was occurring during COVID. The base price of the 2024 car went up to $114,400. That's a 7.3% difference between 2003 and 2004. The base price of a 2025 Carrera went to $120,100. That's another roughly $6,000 on top of that. Like I said before the tariff was announced, what Porsche was going to do, Car and Driver said that the price of the 2025 car was $129,950. Now, to my knowledge, the 2025 911 Coupe was the first of the 992.2 cars, right? So it's really hard to draw a direct parallel from a car getting more expensive because more options become standard. They change the car. All these things occurred. Now, basically, the way that it was read to me is that with the, sorry, let me gather myself for a second. I'm not a big number guy. So the 2026 number went to 129,950. And then if you go on the Porsche website today, excluding the destination charge, it went from 129,950 to 132,300. Now, if you compare that to a 2025 car, that's a 9.3% increase between a 2025 992.1 and a 2026 992.2. Sorry, I take that back. Lots of numbers. 2025 Carrera 120,100 to a 2026 Carrera is now 132,300. So that's a 9.3% increase, and that includes the 3.6% tariff that was added to these cars. Now, this is, as I said, it's on all base prices and all options. They factored all of that in there. So let's say that this is a fluid thing, right? Nobody knows what's going to happen. If the tariff went away, what is the likelihood that that amount of money would be decreased from those options? And
Zero.
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 right. So
Yep. This is going to be
so
the new price. I mean,
so
if
so it's
tomorrow it changes back to no tariffs,
so
these are the new prices going forward.
it's we can assume that that is the case because the last thing that you would want is like you think the United States is super litigious, right? So think about that they wound it back, but all these people in these couple of months, like I had a guy buy a Panamera from a dealership and they had to add the 3.6% to the car. If in 4 months that goes away and those people feel slighted, what are the odds they call up Paul Zuckerman and say, you know, I have an issue. I want to create a class action lawsuit against Porsche because I don't feel that I was treated right in this scenario. Like,
Well, we
what
have
do
to
you
be
do there?
we have to be sensitive to the fact that tariff regimes and import taxes and luxury prices and luxury taxes and all this stuff has been, that's normal for most of the world. You go over to Singapore, you go over to even Canada, the taxes those guys pay on their cars. I think in Singapore, the average, like a new whatever is going to cost 2x by the time you're actually having it on the road. We've been kind of spoiled, frankly, and I'm not suggesting that we're not being taxed enough, but the reality of it is that the tariffs are going to adversely affect the number of people that will be willing to pay the prices for these new cars. It's not a function anymore. Psychologically, the jump in prices that people are starting to experience, going back to my Ferrari, for example, the Ferrari now, just to put a speciality on the road, decent options with taxes, that's going to be 650 grand. That's a lot of freaking money. And people, you can say whatever you want to say, but that's a lot of money. Will those, and the Ferrari customer for a long time, just as the GT3 RS customer and a GT Porsche customer, has been spoiled because it's kind of a depreciation proof purchase. Another one of our customers was asked, or another one of our listeners was asking about his 718 Spider RS that's arriving, and he's wondering what the tariffs are going to be. And hopefully we're answering the question for you. So the question is will those cars okay, so if your new Porsche or your new Ferrari or new whatever, it's going to cost that 15% more. I'm, scaling it up too much. What does that do to the current cars that are on the road? Does that bring those cars up in value? Hell yeah, it's going to, because the price differential is going to be too great. And so, for example, in Ferrari world, a 296 GTB, if you look for a 2023 296 GTB, nice car, nice options, no excuses car, 375 now, and the original customer paid probably 75,000 more for it than that. Are you telling me that a 296 Speciale is worth 650 grand? Really? That doesn't make any sense to me. What does make sense is those 296 prices are going to increase. What does make sense to me is the cars that are on the road are going to see a nice run up in prices. But here's what really makes sense to me. People are going to start rejecting these prices. Not even before the tariff. Prices are getting out of control, in my opinion. It feels to me like there's a bubble that's forming with these supercars, sports cars, wherever the hell you want to call them, that just is not, it doesn't make sense. And I'll prove it to you. If you think about if you want the best 911s, I was listening to, and I sent you guys this link. I was listening to somebody talk about this yesterday on a podcast. The best 911s have already been made. And the new ones are getting too big. They're getting too tech laden. They're getting too expensive. You could argue the ST makes me wrong, but these new Porsche 911s in particular, I don't find them that appealing personally. And I think the best ones are the backdated one, or the older ones. And if you want proof of that, look what people are willing to pay for them. A 964 RS is $250,000 to 350 grand. Look what people are willing to pay for used hot rodded 911s, $1 million. That tells you that there's an enormous market for cars that are smaller, cars that are simpler, cars that are more analog. And the manufacturers, what are they doing? They're making these big bloated whales with all this tech crap that nobody even really wants, and it's overpriced.
Well, I wonder if the Ferrari, the game people have talked about with Ferrari, we've talked about it before with like, being on the list, getting chosen to buy the car. I mean, I remember a couple of weeks ago, I was at a place where there were several of my clients and friends who would be the people who could get an F80. They would just say, I'll take the F80. And none of them were interested, not with the price it was going to be and what it was. And like you said, Tim, what else they could buy. I mean, now they'll start looking at an Enzo. Maybe they'll look at a LaFerrari. They'll look at some of these other cars and like, hey, if I'm going to buy something that expensive, I want, no matter how good Chris Harris says it is, I'm not going to spend that kind of money with the tariffs and things that don't necessarily equal value and go get something that's actually a known commodity
What's a
value.
different, Paul? It's a different kind of purchase. When you're
Yep.
buying something that's in that price range, you're buying it to have it. You're buying it to look at it. You're buying it to go to the wine and cheese parties. You're buying it for the experience. You're not really truly buying. You're never going to put that car on the track. You're not going to. And
Right.
my fear, if we make this full circle, since we're mostly focused on Porsches on the show, my fear is the Porsche is going to go the same direction because they're seeing what a honey hole this is. They're seeing how elastic that upper end customer is. And I look, how much is the new GT3R or GT2 RS going to cost? I'm hearing rumors $1 million, right?
I
And
mean,
so
considering an ST, was getting marked up by dealers new for, 650 sounds like a deal. When I saw that one last November at Porsche Palm Springs, an ST in kind of the standard colors, and they had after ADM a price of 650, I was like, those guys are on crack. 650 is actually a bargain because it's really now 700 or 750.
you can rationalize when you're spending that kind of money. You can rationalize when you're buying a toy to a certain extent that I'm doing it for my, you only live once type experience. But when you start getting into that price point, anybody that has the money to spend that much money on a car is automatically thinking about opportunity costs of putting that much money into a car. I'm sorry, they just are, especially with interest rates like they are. So if you're thinking about spending $1 million, even if you're a billionaire because you're not stupid with money, and you're thinking about if I put that money in the S&P 500, it's going to be giving me on average 10.3% per year. That is how you're wired to think. And if all of a sudden the illusion of the car going up in value is no longer there, and that's what's happening with Ferrari, and I'm fearful that's going to happen with Porsche if they overprice, then the whole damn thing is going to come tumbling down. That is my opinion. And I see that happening with similar conversations I'm having with my friends. They're saying, this doesn't make sense. I'm going to buy an older car. And that's the reason I think the three of you guys are 100% in the right place at the right time. And like the 997 behind you, and that G body that's behind Dave, and that Audi RS2 that's behind Casey, those are going to be the cars where people start migrating to. So it's very possible that what's going on right now is going to cause an explosion in the value of these older cars, but also the demand for people that know how to work on them. Discuss.
Yeah, I think we're already seeing that. I mean, just the 997.2 market when I first said I was getting the car and Casey kind of lit up because that was before I knew he was the grand poobah of 997s. When he got excited about it, I was like, what's the excitement? And I had a price in mind. He's like, reevaluate. When I looked at the 997.2 manual coupe market in the last like 3 months, it has really grown. And I think because it was the perfect thing of what you're talking about, economics, supply, demand, and people going, hey, if I'm going to spend, if I want to order a Carrera T, I'm going to be spending 150 is now like we're going to get real close to 200 by the time you're really out the door. And they're like, is that going to be the experience I want? We already know it's going to depreciate. It's not going to go up. Or do I get something like that? Or even a 997.2 GT3 for this, which is $190,000, that is kind of the same price. And, Porsche guys, at least when they talk about investment, it's the wrong word. Their idea of investment is have this experience, have it for a certain amount of time, and then break even. Maybe that
Yep.
happens. Maybe that's their version of investment, which is why I hate it. It's more like park money at a slow depreciation is really what it is. But fine, call it investment. And I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah.
I think it's
I
going to
call it money
happen.
in, money. It's money in, money out. It's
Yep.
like what they talk about on Spike's podcast, and that's what I told the guy that bought that 997.2 car. I was like, it's going to be worth that much money, if not more. I
But
mean, the
Keith,
997.2 is a car it's a 964 for people that don't want to deal with 964 problems. That's what
Yep.
it
But
is.
here's what's changed, and this is what no one's really talking about. At least they're not talking about publicly. The way you'd sold these cars in the past, the way we were all manipulated by people like Paul into buying these cars in the past, I say that with love, my friend,
I know.
is because the cars were going to go up in value. I'm sorry, that's just true. You walked into pick your high-end car dealership, and it's the car is going to hold its value or it's going to go up in value. And guess what? It worked that way for a generation. It worked that way for maybe 15 years. It doesn't work that way anymore. And now that I'll pick on Ferrari, now that these Ferraris are depreciating, I don't know how long they're going to be able to continue to raise prices and expect the customers. Is there a 650 Speciale that's going to be selling for that's sold now for 650 that's going to be selling for 650 or 675 or 700? When they come out, I think they'll probably people will be able to make 50 grand on it if they want to. But a year from then, I don't know. I think those days are over. I think they're fully priced, and manufacturers are taking all the meat off the bone, and that's going to produce a huge disincentive for people to take the risk and tie up money. That's in my
But
opinion.
I think Porsche has been trying to, as a Porsche as a manufacturer, I think they hated the fact that the dealer networks were making the gross amount of profit when Porsche is the one who's actually rolling up the sleeve and making the car. And I think Porsche has always been trying to figure out how do we get all this profit, because we price the car out and it's 2 years later that it shows up at the dealer lot and then we missed out on, 30% of the potential profit. And I think Porsche is, I don't know if it's wrong or right, but they're getting better at narrowing that gap where there's very
That's the
little meat.
problem, though, Paul. That's
Yeah.
the problem. They shouldn't. They should always make it so that their best customers who've earned their ability through their dealership to buy the GT car has a financial incentive. And taking that off the table is stupid
Well,
because you're going to run customers to used cars. That's what you're going to do.
Yep.
well, I want to interrupt briefly, being that someone that came from that era. You have to remember that Porsche as a manufacturer and Porsche Cars North America does not sell cars to end users. Dealerships sell cars to end users. And a dealership is only as good as a dealership can be. There are dealerships that I know that sell cars at MSRP to people and take care of their best customers. That's what I tried to do for so long. And sometimes when they look at, oh, this guy will give me $50,000 more if I put him in line for a GT3 Touring, that's on the dealership. That's not on Porsche Cars North America. And that's the problem. That's what people need to revisit. And that's why I like the idea. And I know when Paul consigns a car or when Dave consigns a car, or when I try to sell a car for somebody on Bring a Trailer, I give them a transparent expectation of what I believe they should expect. And it should be prioritized for the customer and not for profitability. And everybody needs to be on the same page. And unfortunately, when you look at these manufacturers now and dealerships kind of be more of a fashion brand that we were talking about earlier, things get, it's like you said about that Richard Mille thing. Like, those are the ugliest watches in the world. And now they're $1 million, right? But because it's $1 million, people want it. These things are like, people care, like I talked about before, people care more about what color the car is than how the car actually, keep smiling, Dave. People how the car drives. It's all about the experience. It's all about the camaraderie. Like,
So where's
Porsche's
it go,
doing this.
Casey? Where's it go? I mean, now we talked about what we're predicting is going to happen. That the manufacturers are totally not sensitive anymore to depreciation. That the tariffs are going to force prices up. Manufacturers are obviously forcing prices up. Porsche's the example. So there's no more meat on the bone. Ferrari's fully pricing the cars, tariff or not. So where does all of it go? I don't
It's gonna
think there's enough customers to pay for cars that price point. It does not make sense to me.
Well, I'll put it this way. We should revisit this question in December when we look at the second half of the year and see how all of these pricing impacts have led to increases in prices for all their cars.
I don't think it'll be longer than that because there's people that are in the cycle right now that are still basically smoking the hopium, thinking that they're still on the right side of the trade. And I promise you, there's no. I am one of these customers, and I'm telling you, I'm checking the F out. I declined my 296 Speciale order. I told you guys that. I'm not gonna do it. It doesn't make sense to me. I can't. No, just hard no. Yes, Dave.
No, I've raised my
No,
hand as one of the guys with smoking the Hope Peace pipe here, whatever,
and
the Hope
and
pipe.
being the guy who's never owned a car newer than 20 years, I'm always been in the older car. I mean, it was a struggle to buy my wife a new Volvo last year. That is the first new car I have bought in almost 30 years. I never buy new cars. I like older cars. I value, I hate depreciation. I buy things at the bottom. And I keep them a long time. I mean, like I tell people who buying, like the 997, like, your goal is to find a way to keep these vintage cars or older cars for at least 5 years without even thinking about it and enjoy them and get value at it. Because after 5 years, the value proposition is no longer strictly a financial one. but it's more of an emotional one. So
But Paul, if you're going to spend $250,000 or $200,000 on a freaking new 911T or whatever it is, and those are awesome cars, and I really love the T. Look, if you got a local Porsche mechanic, right? If you like the experience of the older car, in my opinion, you are stone cold nuts not to buy the older car because it is the true 911 experience. These
I
newer
agree.
911s, they don't groove. I don't like them. I had a new 990. I had a new 992 Touring, and I had a 991.2 Touring at the same time. The older Touring was so much better to me than the newer Touring. I sold the new one.
Yeah. And I agree. I mean, generally I like all my fun cars to be older because, kind of slow car fast. How fast can I go? I'm not going to the track. And then when I'm using a daily driver, I mean, name your luxury brand, lease something for 3 years, give it back. It's just I use those as appliances. My wife's Volvo is an appliance, and eventually it'll get replaced with another appliance. And I honestly could almost care less. I just want
That's why
Apple CarPlay
Teslas
and air
exist.
conditioning.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's why Teslas exist
Oh
because
yeah.
people like appliances. But I,
Yep.
I really do. I really honestly think that if there's a takeaway from this whole conversation, is give yourself permission to check out from the whole mind junk about tariffs and prices and options and PTS colors and all this Mickey Mouse and go back catalog. Because if you're really a car enthusiast, if you're wanting to be a car enthusiast, the back catalog experiences are definitely more engaging than the newer ones, especially when you're dealing with 911s. There, in my opinion, I'd love to debate it, have some people throw up some comments. You guys have any, we've run long today, obviously. And I'm about 20 minutes late for a bathroom break, but do you guys have any closing thoughts?
Buy old cars. That's it. Good
Buy
job.
old cars from Paul
I
Kramer
second
at
that.
Auto Kennel. Dave?
Or Dave Van Epps at Underworks.
Yeah, and when you buy the old cars, if you're East Coast oriented, have Dave work on them. My old car's there right now. And Casey?
Well, just remember the only 911 that ever got cheaper was an RS America and a 993. Other than that, they always got more expensive. So they're just going to keep going up, be it tariffs or inflation or what people are willing to pay. So, I mean, as a guy that's driven most of the cool 911s that have ever existed, sans like a 959 and like a couple other ones, like I own a 964. It's to me it was aspirational, or I'd own that car behind Paul. That's what I like. And I agree with what you said, Tim. Back catalog is great. If you don't like electric steering, buy a car with manual steering. I mean, I remember when people were complaining about the electric power steerings and 991s, I said, you should go drive my 914 and see what that feels like.
Stop
Anyway.
chasing the next high is really, if you want to listen, Casey's not included in the wise old man thing because he's too young here, but listen to your three wise old friends. Stop chasing the next high because it's futile. And really the newest and the greatest is very rarely, unfortunately, because of the haptic controls and the new tech stuff and the cars getting bigger and bigger and bigger, they're really moving further and further away from what their original missions are. And I'll answer my own question from a bit ago. Full circle, what seems to me is the manufacturers, because the cars are going to become too expensive and because they're realizing that the older cars are becoming more and more appealing and values are increasing, they're going to start making new cars that are like the old cars, manual transmissions, gas engines, smaller cars physically, less options, less crap, more owner or more driver engagement. That's when my prediction what's going to have to happen because that it only makes sense to me. That's the direction the market's going to go. A Samara, just a complete rejection of the prices and the sizes and the designs, and people are going to say, this is not what I want anymore. The trend is going to change, and that's what's always happened in the past. So next week, we're going to talk about 997s. We're going to talk about to wing or not to wing, or maybe the week after that. Yeah, so any questions, any suggestions you guys have, any ideas you have, this is something that's a passion project for all four of us. We're genuinely thrilled and happy with the response we've gotten. If you're on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe. Give us a 5-star review over on iTunes. We would certainly appreciate any feedback to help us get the word out about what we're all passionate about, which hopefully you are becoming more passionate about, which is the automotive hobby. So in the meantime, from Tim Harris, from Dave, from Paul, and from Casey. And by the way, guys, if you want to contact any of these guys directly, all of their contact information, their links and their Instagrams and whatnot are in the show descriptions. So just go there and dial in. Hey, you guys have a blessed week and we'll talk to you on the next show. See you guys.
Good luck, Paul.
See ya. Thanks.
See ya. Yes.